Hey, Godfather of Anxiety here. For my latest video, I just wanted to make a short video on how to deal with panic attacks. And in this video, I'm going to give you tips on how to keep yourself from having them in the first place. I'm going to give you tips to help you with that. And then I'm going to follow that up with some tips that I've learned that you can do if a panic attack does start, if you start to have a panic attack, and things that have worked with me over the last 21 years having to deal with panic attacks. So I'm going to preface my video here with the same advice I always give you guys. If you're having panic attacks, they're affecting your life, they're making work difficult, they're making relationships difficult, they're making traveling difficult, go seek the help of a mental health professional. That is an absolute necessity. It's the quickest way to get better and to not let panic attacks take a large chunk of your life and cause problems for years and years instead of just addressing it quickly and getting it taken care of. So that's number one. Now, getting into the tips that will help you to prevent yourself from having them in the first place. The first tip I'm going to give you is going to sound boring, and I mention it in all my videos, but that's get your sleep, get your exercise, and eat in a balanced fashion. Don't let food control you. Sleep is paramount to all mental health issues. I'm telling you guys, whether it's depression, whether it's panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, for the mind to work well, you need to get your sleep. You need to get quantity and quality of sleep. If you're not sure whether or not you're getting, quality sleep, have a sleep study done. There's different conditions that can affect this. Sleep apnea is a really common condition that can deprive your body of oxygen and will keep you from getting into a deep, restful sleep, and it will affect your mental health as well as your physical health. Also, restless leg syndrome, another thing that will keep you from getting a good night's rest and will affect your mental health. So number one, get these in order. Exercise, I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm not talking about some long, arduous exercise plan. Get 30 minutes 3 times a week, as long as that's cleared by your doctor. It can be walking, it can be hiking, it can be gardening, it can be lifting weights. Whatever gets your heart rate up and gets that endorphin release. And this will, again, very much help lower your state of anxiety, and it will help you to be in a situation where you're not going to have a panic attack, or at least it'll greatly lessen the chances of that happening. So that's the first one. The second one, avoid stimulants if you can. I've done shift work over the years where, I've worked long hours and I've worked odd hours. So it's been extremely difficult to limit my caffeine intake, but at least try, if you can, to limit the use of stimulants, because for some people, a cup of coffee is not really a trigger. It really isn't. And for me, I've noticed over the years that caffeine by itself, as long as it's coming from coffee or some other source like that, I don't have an issue with. If I drink energy drinks, or if I take a supplement that, increases the response of caffeine, they mix it with some other ingredient that makes it even more potent. If I take one of those, then I will have problems. Then I will feel restless, and I will feel more likely, and I'll be more susceptible to having a panic attack. So to the extent possible, if you have to reduce your caffeine intake or eliminate it altogether, if you're very caffeine sensitive, this can help with panic attacks, because, you'll notice if you're caffeine sensitive, you have a cup of coffee on an empty stomach, you'll notice quite an effect. And if you're already dealing with underlying anxiety or panic disorder, this could put you in a situation where you'd be a lot more likely to have a panic attack. Number 3, know your triggers. Know what increases your stress level to the point where you could have a panic attack. So for me, the big one, I've told you guys in my videos, driving, especially on closed access highways. So I'm okay driving, in regular city streets and highways. When I get on a place where there's closed access, where I feel like I have no control, if I do have a panic attack, that seems to set me up to be in a position to have a panic attack. So, know your triggers. If it's crowds that trigger you, if it's, traveling, if it's, certain places, know them. Now, just because you know your triggers, that means you don't want to eliminate your triggers, because that will just lead to avoidance behaviors that will deepen your anxiety and make the prevalence of panic attacks increase. But what you do want to do is, okay, let's say you're not well rested, you're already stressed out from life, just general stressors in life, family, job, whatever, and you know that there's a trigger, whether it be driving on the thruway, whether it be going to a large gathering where there's a lot of people. You want to, maybe that wouldn't be the best time to do those things. Or if you do them, have some things in place in case you do have some type of an issue where you can get out of it without having something embarrassing happen, or just something that will, anytime that something big happens when you have a panic attack, it reinforces the fear, and then it just turns into a cycle, and you'll have another one and another one. Trust me, guys, take it from someone who's had hundreds of panic attacks at least. You don't want to be in that situation. So know your triggers. Don't avoid them altogether, but respect them. Don't put your hand in the mouth of the lion, if you will. Be smart, especially if you're already compromised. And that goes along with figuring out how you what type of state of anxiety you're in. And as you recover from these anxiety spectrum conditions, you'll get a really good grip on that, and you'll learn your limitations. And you're always going to try to expand them, but not at the expense of having a full-blown panic attack. The fourth tip I have to avoid having them in the first place is avoid anticipatory thinking. So I was just talking about knowing your triggers, right? So say you have something, you find out a week ahead of time, either you're going to be driving, you're going to be going to going to a gathering or a concert or a ball game or whatever it is. And there's going to be a lot of people there, or maybe there's just going to be a particular person there that elevates your stress level and can sometimes be a trigger, right? Well, if you know about it a week ahead of time, this is where you got to really work on your anticipatory thinking. Anticipatory thinking / catastrophizing, because that's what we do, right? That's what those of us with these conditions, we start thinking out worst case scenarios, and we start thinking them out way ahead of time. And as I've mentioned many times on the channel, most of the time the thing we're worrying about never happens. If it does happen, it's nothing like what we picture. But just the anticipatory thinking alone, if you're already in an anxious state and your fight or flight is already turned on, you can anticipatory think your way into a panic attack. So don't do this. Don't worry about something that's a week away or a month away, and get that cycle of catastrophizing and anticipatory thinking going in your mind, because again, it will happen. If you do that, you might as well just book the panic attack already, because it's going to happen. You're already working yourself into that state, and then it will happen. It might even happen before the actual thing, because you're so upset and so hyper focusing on all of the horrible potential outcomes, which again, usually never happen. And if they do, they're nothing like what we imagine. It's, a lot of the time I've had panic attacks. People have no idea I had a panic attack. I just excused myself, and here you're thinking that, you've changed someone's opinion of yourself, and it's really not the case. So don't kill yourself and don't set yourself up for a panic attack with anticipatory thinking. Learn how to avoid doing that. And that'll be part of the therapy that you do with a mental health professional. Now, what about when a panic attack starts? You can feel it. You're starting to disconnect. Things are getting, you can just feel the adrenaline starting to dump. Your heart rate's increasing. It's the beginning of a panic attack, and you know it because you've had them in the past and you know what this is. So what can you do? Is it just going to happen and there's nothing you can do? To some degree, that's possibly the case, but I'm going to give you some tips here that should really help at least mitigate how severe the panic attack is. The first one, and this is really important, and it can sound cliche and corny, but we need to learn how to breathe, okay? What I noticed, and it was brought to my attention by my wife. So when we're in such an anxious state, we're not very good at, first of all, human beings aren't that good at self-analysis anyways, generally. And we're especially bad at it when we're in an anxious state. So what I didn't realize I was doing before I had panic attacks is I'm holding my breath. So generally, before someone has a panic attack, what they'll do is they'll hold their breath or they'll hyperventilate. They'll breathe shallow and quickly. And both things accomplish the same thing. They deprive your brain of oxygen, and they set you up to have a panic attack. And if you're having a panic attack, this is why you'll feel like you're going to pass out. Your heart rate will be going crazy. Again, your body's not getting enough oxygen, so your heart is pumping like crazy to try to accomplish that task, because you're not cooperating with your diaphragm. So learn how to breathe correctly. So what do I mean by this? This is really important. It's not about just taking a deep breath, although a deep breath can be good. It's about breathing using your diaphragm. So you'll know if you're doing it correctly if you put your hand on your stomach, not your chest, very important, and you feel your stomach going up when you breathe in. So you breathe in through your nose, probably for a count of 3, hold for maybe a count of 2 or 3, and then exhale through your mouth at the same rate. Now, guys, this is not necessarily easy if the panic attack has really taken hold. But if you're just starting to feel that way, you're breathing. And either way, even if you are actually in the deep throes of a panic attack, if you can get yourself to focus on belly breathing, it will shorten and lessen the panic attack. Trust me on this. I've tried it. It works. It definitely works. If you're so nervous, though, that you just breathe in deep and hold your breath and you're breathing through your chest, that will make it worse. That won't make it better. So learn how, when you're not having a panic attack, you can watch video after video on the internet, on YouTube. You can watch tons of demonstrations on how to properly belly breathe. And this will really help if you're starting to have a panic attack. The next thing, and this is the most important thing, and this is something that, boy, I wish I knew the first couple of years that I had panic attacks, and that is let it happen. So, in other words, what I was doing, because, I kind of never didn't really feel like dying. So I would always fight it. You know, like even if I got the wind knocked out of me when I was younger, I'd get up and I'd like run. You know, like I'm not going out like this, right? And because you get that nervous feeling because you can't get a breath. But with a panic attack, you got to just let it happen. You can't, if you fight it, it will intensify it times 100. That's what I did when I had that first panic attack. And it lasted nearly an hour. I mean, it was, I can't even, I was so disconnected from my environment and in such a horrible state. I didn't feel right for weeks after that. So, but I was fighting desperately because I didn't want to die. And I felt that impending doom feeling, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. So let it happen. If you feel like you're dying or losing control or both, let yourself lose control, let yourself die. I promise you guys, you won't die and you won't lose control. This is a fight or flight response for an inappropriate situation. You're not fighting a bear. You're not fighting a war. You're probably maybe in a grocery store or driving a car or whatever triggers your panic in a crowd. And it is not a life-threatening situation, but those chemicals are being dumped that would be dumped if it was a life-threatening situation. And that is what is causing the panic attack. So let it happen. Don't fight it. So important. If you get nothing else from this video, if you're having a panic attack, let it happen. Don't fight it. You'll be okay. It will pass. And that'll get into a little bit more of what I'm going to say here as the video goes on. Something that was really genius that my wife did that helped me, and this is tip number 3, ask yourself if you're in pain. Now, I do know that some people actually do get chest pain and stuff when they have their panic attacks. That wasn't me. I just had that feeling of impending doom, like I was dying and disconnecting from everything around me. And I would sometimes feel like I couldn't breathe. That's another one that happens. That's a lot of fun. But my wife, she asked me, she says, what hurts? And I thought about it and it was like, well, nothing really hurts. So what that does and why this is a good question to ask yourself, it gets into my 4th tip. It helps you to label it as a panic attack. So that's tip number 4. Label it as a panic attack. Recognize it for what it is. It's not you dying. It's not a heart attack. It's not a stroke. It's not any of those things that you're thinking must be happening because of the way you're feeling. That's why, if you can get yourself to do that, to label it, it will definitely take a lot of the power away from the panic attack. Oh, it's a panic attack. It's a panic attack. In fact, this happened to me a little over a year ago. Well, I was driving and it had been a while since I'd had one. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Because I felt it happening and I'm like, oh, it's a panic attack. And just saying that, even though I still felt very uncomfortable, my heart was racing, I started to feel disconnected somewhat from my environment. It made it so that I could get through it without actually having what I would call a full-blown panic attack where you feel the need to either run or, like you're just going to die. I didn't get to that point because I labeled it. So labeling it as a panic attack, realizing that what's happening with all these symptoms, even the disconnecting from your environment where it feels like you're dying, that is just fight or flight. Those are fight or flight chemicals for an inappropriate situation. And that's why you're feeling that way. It's a panic attack and it will pass. And then finally, my last tip has to do with engage with somebody during a panic attack. I know that feeling of separating, like you're not even there, like you're drifting away, that was so disturbing to me. And it did help if I could get somebody to engage with me as I started to feel that way, to realize that I wasn't fading away. I'm not dying. So if you can get somebody to engage with you, or anything you can do to get your mind engaged, it could be anything. Just try to think outside yourself. But for me, you know, I felt like just talking with somebody, you know, getting them to engage with me would help things to start to feel a little more real again. And, you know, if it's somebody that you're not comfortable with having a panic attack in front of, you know, just try to ask them regular questions. You don't need to let out of the bag that you feel like you're dying. Because I know how that is, the embarrassment and that issue that you can face. But a lot of the times when I had panic attacks, I was with the people that I loved and trusted. And, you know, I would just engage with them. And this would help me realize that I'm still there. I'm still real. I'm still alive. I'm not dying. And it really helped. So this is just a short video I wanted to make because panic attacks are horrible to deal with. Nobody wants to feel like they're dying. No one wants to feel that disconnected from the surroundings, like they're fading away, like they're having a heart attack, like someone's choking them. I could go on and on with the horrible symptoms that you suffer when you have a panic attack. Nobody wants to feel that way. So I wanted to make this video because, you know, some things can help you not to get to that stage in the first place. That was the first part of the video. And the second part, if you happen to end up on a day when you didn't get enough sleep, or there's some other trigger that's going on and you start to have one, doing those tips that I just mentioned will really help mitigate or lessen the severity of the panic attack. It may not stop it altogether, but it will at least take it from being something that might affect you for weeks, because that first one affected me for weeks. And it might turn it into something where maybe just that day you just need to rest, and the next day you're not just thinking about over and over again how terrible the panic attack was, and if you're dying, or whatever other crazy questions we ask ourselves when we have panic attacks, because they're so unnatural, right? We're supposed to either be running from something dangerous or fighting something dangerous, and this is happening for no, you know, legitimate reason. So you're, you know, sitting in a car, walking in a grocery store, you know, whatever you're doing, it's not a life or death situation, but you're getting the same chemicals dropped in your, you know, dumped in your body that you would if it was. So that's why it's so hard to reconcile the two, and that's why panic attacks can be very difficult to overcome, especially if you don't know what's happening. And I didn't know what was happening for a while there. It took me a while to realize what was happening. And so that's why I made the video. If I can help you guys, you know, not have horrible panic attacks, or at least mitigate them, then it was worth it to film this video. That's about all I wanted to say. Guys, again, thank you so much for the engagement. The engagement's been excellent on the channel. I love the comments. Like, share, subscribe. If you know somebody who's having panic attacks, or you know, has a history of panic attacks, or who's living with somebody who's having panic attacks, have them look at the channel. Have them watch this video. There's a lot of things I didn't know for years, because a lot of the times we're too embarrassed, you know, men especially, but women too. We're embarrassed to go to see a mental health professional, so we don't ever get a clear definition of what's going on with us. And it's so different than anything that has happened before in our lives. We're like, you know, that's why we think it's something physiological. We're dying, we're having a heart attack, there's some underlying horrible health condition. There's all kinds of things that can run wild in your mind and will just make you have more panic attacks, not less. So that's why I made the video. Again, thank you guys so much. Let anyone know about the channel who may have these issues. And thank you so much. And until my next video, take care.